The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. I think we're going to wait a little bit for some more attendees to join in, but we'll begin the presentation shortly.
Well, good afternoon. This is Sulaim Khan with the Texas Energy Engineering Services, and with me is Joey Pham, and we will be tag teaming this presentation together. And I'll go over a few slides, and then Joey's going to go over a few slides, and some of them we may be presenting them jointly. So the overview of this presentation is that we will just do a very quick recap of the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. This is something that had happened earlier this morning. So this will be 1 or 2 slides just on the recap over there. We will go over the building certification process, so the Energy Star certification process. We will provide you some information on the SECO Technical Assistance Program. We'll have 1 or 2 case studies of how people participated and did the Energy Star certification. And then we'll leave 5 to 10 minutes in the end, hopefully, for questions and any discussions that we might have.
Yep. And throughout the presentation, if you want, you can send the questions in the chat, and we'll have somebody monitoring that, but we should have time to answer some of those questions towards the end.
Very good. So what is an Energy Star Portfolio Manager? It was developed by EPA and DOE as part of the Energy Star program. It's an online energy and water tracking tool, and it is a must for Energy Star certification. In other words, if you want to certify your buildings for Energy Star, you must have the data entered into the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and it generates certain documents as a result of that, and as a requirement, Energy Star Portfolio Manager is a must, basically. So that's important to keep in mind. So also, this presentation is not about Energy Star Portfolio Manager, but we just want to let you know that there are extensive training material available on Energy Star website. There's a help and a glossary dialogues available for most screens in the Portfolio Manager. And it looks like TEESI webinar training on Portfolio Manager. We have done something in that regards, and that's also on the YouTube, and that's the address for it. So important thing is that that if you all have any questions, you all could definitely call us, and we can provide you some input or guidance and answer any questions you all may have, even after this presentation, basically. So the certification criteria, I want to briefly go over that. Not all building types are eligible for Energy Star score, and you can find out if your building is eligible for Energy Star score or not by clicking on that website address we have, and it's got listing and requirements for which building can have an Energy Star score. For most part of it, the offices, school buildings, school campuses, and few other institutions can have Energy Star certification, and they all have a criteria that you have to meet. And once you meet that criteria, you could be certified. And I think we go over that, the type of buildings that are eligible for certification later on. So there is an important thing to keep in mind. Another one is that there's a benchmark score, and the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, you must have a score of 75 in order to be eligible for Energy Star building label. So must have a score of 75 to be able to do the certification. I will give an overview of the certification process, and then I think from there Joey will take over and go into each one of those elements in more detail, and I'll be joining in from time to time also. So the process is that these are, you can consider them as steps required in the Energy Star certification, basically. So you have to update the portfolio. You have to make sure that you are eligible. Then you have to start the application process. Then you follow that up with an on-site verification. Then based on on-site verification and the initial applications, you can review the documents, and then you finalize and submit the applications. And what happens that the EPA reviews or their representative reviews the applications, and they will send you notifications about, typically if they have follow-up questions, which sometimes they do, they will ask for some information, and then you will have to provide that information. Once all that is in place, then it goes into an official notification that your building is Energy Star certified. So somebody might ask, how long does it take, basically? So this could take anywhere from 30 to 90 days, the whole process. Typically, the review process is from EPA is close to, I would say, within a week or 2 weeks after you submit an application, you will hear something back, sometime immediately, but sometime it might take a little longer. And sometimes they will have questions that you'll have to clarify and verify, and as a result of that, it might take a little longer. Go ahead, Joey.
All right. So the first step in the certification process, as Salim just overviewed, is to review and update your portfolio manager. So this involves making sure that for whichever building you're hoping to certify or group of buildings, that all of your energy data has been updated and you're not missing any days, or there's no gaps between the bills that are entered on there. So, if it's missing a month, you'll need to find that month's consumption for all the respective meters, whether that be the electricity, the natural gas, propane, or diesel fuel, if y'all have alternative fuels for heating, and as well as any on-site generation, such as PV or wind power. So all the building's energy meters must be captured, and then all building use details, which we'll go over later on in this presentation, need to be entered and updated. It's very important that you make sure that there are no default values entered or selected for these building use details. So those are things that when you're setting up your facility, you may not have known that information, and you may have just selected a default value, but you need to make sure that all of those are updated and verified in order to qualify for the certification. So one of the other main things is that the facilities, as Salim had mentioned, you need to have a score of 75 or higher after you update all your energy and building use details. That's one of the main criterion for certification. And then after you've reviewed and updated your portfolio manager, you'll need to start the application process, which is 100% online through the Energy Star Portfolio Manager portal. So the top of a application for certification, it should look something like this at the top of the form. And then after you start your application, you'll need to schedule verification visits by your licensed professional, whether that be a registered architect or a professional engineer. And one caveat is the site visits for verification, they must be conducted while the building is occupied. So for schools, unfortunately, summer might not be the best time to do it unless there's summer school activities or there's building occupants there at the time of the site visit. And that's one of the requirements by the Energy Star. So another bit of information for the eligibility check. It's just additional details, or these are some key information, is that, as we mentioned, you need to have a score of 75 or higher. Over 5,000 square foot is in general, that applies across the board, but there are some exceptions. For example, schools and offices, banks and religious worship facilities, warehouses, they may be as small as 1,000 square feet, and then there are some other exceptions there as well. As we mentioned earlier, we need to make sure that there's no default values for any of your building use details, and then there are some occupancy requirements as well, specifically for schools and K through 12 schools. That you'll need over 55% occupancy for the offices and over 60% occupancy for the school. And I think during COVID, there were some exceptions for building occupancy, but I think the time duration for the COVID exceptions has expired starting this year. And I think lastly, for the eligibility check, I think we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. This all energy meters must be captured. That includes the solar and any other renewable energies that are on site. You cannot have any gaps in your monthly meter entries. The properties, we can't use estimations. So whenever you're entering your energy meter data, there's a checkbox. If you're estimating that energy usage, you cannot have the estimations. You have to use the most accurate data available to you. And then lastly, the period ending date of the application, it must be current within 120 days. So you need to make sure that your energy information is as up to date as you can make it. I think that allows you about 4 months to process your application and submit it. And then there are additional eligibility requirements that are all laid out on the Energy Star website. There could be too much to list in this presentation, but if you click on this link that will provide this slides, then you can see what all the different eligibility requirements there are for your specific buildings if you're looking to get those certified. So earlier we mentioned that when you start the application process, this is all going to be through the Energy Star Portfolio Manager portal. So when you click on your specific building that has a score over 75 you're looking to certify, if all of the eligibility items have been met, then this will pop up at the top of your screen. It'll allow you to apply for Energy Star certification. So when you click that link, you'll be taken to the application online. And this over here on the top right of our screen that we're showing you are the 8 steps in the online application process. What we want to kind of go over were the first 4 steps. There will be a number of screens that pop up. You just kind of have to work through all of that information to provide in the application. So you'll need to provide the building use description and a narrative of your building. This will actually be used on the national database if you or anyone else wants to search for specific buildings. Like this will be what's provided as a narrative for your building, and if it receives the certification, it'll be in the national registry. The second screen is it asks you to select the period ending date of your application. So this could be within any 12-month consecutive period that you want to apply for, and this could be the 12 months for your application. So it needs to be within 120 days of the submission of the application.
So let's go over that a little bit. Okay, so what it means is that if I have 12 consecutive months of data and it is, June 2022, then I can apply for the certification process starting next month or within the next 2, 3, or 4 months or 120 days from my 12 consecutive months of data that I've entered, basically.
Yep. And that data cannot be older than the 120 days. So June, 4 months from now would be October. So the submission must be no later than October if our period ending date is in June. So while we go through this application process, Energy Star will have an automated system that flags any issues that or common issues that they come across. And this may be things such as repeated meter entries, unused energy meters that are not associated with the building, differences or changes to the gross floor area or the square footages of the building, or things are not matching up. then these things will be automatically flagged, and then you'll just need to provide a response for clarification. For example, sometimes when you're looking at natural gas, you may have multiple months that show a certain value like 0 or 1 CCF. And that may be the case, but then their automated system will flag that and ask you to provide any clarifications. So after you work through the first 4 pages of the application, you'll be able to generate your physical application, and you can print that one out. And then your licensed professional should be able to take that to the site and then check some of those items while they're reviewing the information at the site. On the second page of the application process, this is for the awards. So Energy Star, if you are awarded the building certification, they will provide you a certificate as well as a complimentary award. And then in this page, you can kind of select what style you would like, whether it be the classic blue and white logo or the etched glass look. And that's just something that the end user can select however style you'd like, or you can just not and omit the decal. So for the application for certification, a few things are required, but these are the main items. It needs to be verified by a licensed professional.
So let me go over there a little bit. So let me clarify that. What that means is that the licensed professional in the end will be signing, sealing a document that will be submitted to state and to the EPA for certification. But the licensed professional himself does not have to be on site. It could be done one of his designated representatives that's qualified to do that. That's mostly done because if you hire a licensed professional and have them do on-site, the cost might be pretty significant. So as a result of that, a licensed professional, a professional engineer will have to oversee and review the data provided. He can go to the site himself, but is not required to go to the site. But his designated representative that he has confidence in has to go to the site and get the required information.
Yeah. So the on-site confirmation for Energy Star certification, the things that the representative or the professional are looking for, or the space use data. So these are some of the details about your facility that were entered into Portfolio Manager. And that could be the number of occupants there, the square footage, the size of the gyms, the percent area cooled, number of computers. So any various details like that are spot checked during the site visit. And then the main items is to make sure that the building is in compliance with the lighting and the thermal conditions, the environmental conditions, and the ventilation codes, making sure that there's adequate air quality and temperature and humidity and things like that. So those are things that are typically measured at the site. And then another item for the certification is to verify that all energy meters at that location have been captured within the application. And then, of course, as we mentioned, that the period ending date is within 120 days of the submitted date. And we can actually provide some examples of what an actual certification application looks like. So we'll pull that up onto the screen. Can y'all see that okay? Okay, so this is an application or generic application from Energy Star. And we just kind of wanted to show you what it looks like. And some of the details in there will have the property information, the owner, and then some contact information, whether that be the designated representative of your entity or institution, or it could be your energy service provider that's helping you with this application process. So some of the basic information about the facility, what type of facility is it? What's the
Let's
area?
Just go with them still. We got plenty of time.
Sure. The average occupancy, the number of buildings on the campus. So it could be a multi-building campus, or it could just be a standalone building. As I've mentioned previously, the main things that they want us to check too is to make sure that you have acceptable indoor air quality, the thermal environmental conditions, and the illumination. And this is just to make sure that the building operators and owners are not, neglecting the occupants in pursuit of energy savings, just to make sure that it's comfortable in the building, that is adequate for its particular use. So a school, it should be air conditioned and have adequate lighting for the learning environment, for example. And some of the other property use details, I think this specifically is for an office building. So any of these items that you see this blue star right next to it, those details are used in calculating the Energy Star score, or they're part of the algorithm for calculating the score. And then some of the other details are not used in calculating the score. So we'll kind of go over those later on in the presentation. So these are things such as the area, the weekly operating hours, the number of workers that are there on a typical shift, number of computers, and percent heating and cooling. And then there's also some areas on the application where you can provide additional notes about any of these topics per section. So parking lot area can be entered in there and make sure that that's captured for your application. If you have heated parking or enclosed parking areas. And then if you have any vacant areas, then you can provide that information as well. And then one of the last parts of the application is the energy use information. Much of this data is very similar to the statement of energy performance that may be required by some municipalities or jurisdictions, but that's also captured within this Energy Star application. These are things such as the electric or energy usage and the EUI or ECI, the Energy Utilization Index, which is one of those metrics that's provided by Energy Star. So that will all be checked by the licensed professional who signs the application. And then it'll go into detail for all the meters that are associated with the property, whether that be the electric or the natural gas or solar. And then over here is the example of the 12 months of the energy usage data for your application. And then also it could be green power as well. That would be power that you purchase from a green source such as solar or wind farms. And then this last portion is where the owner and the licensed professional would sign and seal the application.
So typically what will happen is that this application will be generated, and then when the verification is done on-site, they will be reviewing that the information in the application is correct and up to date, basically. And once all that is verified, then they will sign and seal that document, and the owner will sign it, and then it is submitted to the Energy Star for further processing, basically.
All right, so we'll just move on. So the next step in the process that we had overviewed is the on-site verification. So I just wanted to kind of go over what's all involved during this on-site verification. The licensed professional or their designated representative will be checking all these details, and will be taking sample measurements in typical areas. They don't have to measure in every area, but I think just a sample is sufficient for the purposes of the verification. And then they will verify all the meters and the renewable energy systems on site, make sure they're all tracked in the application. So as we mentioned earlier, so we have two examples here of the types of building use data, I think, for the schools and the office type buildings, which may be the most relevant to the audience here. So for a school, as you can see here, we have them separated as the details that are used in the calculation algorithm for the score. And then there's building use details that are not used in calculating the score. But all of these information must be verified to be as accurate as reasonably possible for the application. So these things that we had mentioned earlier, is it open on the weekend for the schools, or do they have summer school? Is it a high school? Are there cooking facilities on property? Those are all used in computing the Energy Star score for a K through 12 school. But some of the other details, such as the gym area or the number of walk-in refrigerators and freezers, the number of student seating capacity. So that's actually the number of seats or how many students could possibly be served by that school, not necessarily how many are registered. So the number of seating capacity may be higher than the number that are actually registered. And then also the number of months open per year. As we said earlier, during COVID, there may have been some shutdowns and there were some exceptions, but I think that the exceptions are now over.
The number of computers is very important. Basically, at one point in time, it used to be applied for certification, but I think they revised that, and they need the accurate information, but that's not used in the overall certification of the scoring, basically, right? So the facility type, if it's an office, so almost similar kind of information, 12 months of energy consumption, gross floor area, weekly operating hours, number of PCs, number of workers on the main shift. And if you have more than one shift, then you have to, there could be facilities like police stations and stuff like that, that they have more shifts over there. So that needs to be identified. And the percent cooled and heated, normally you will have, 90 to 100% of the buildings percent cooled or heated, but it could vary in certain cases. So they want all that identified. So this is all spot check during on-site verification. The on-site verification at each facility may take anywhere from 1 hour to 30 minutes. So it's not very extensive, but it's not something that could be done in 5 or 10 minutes also, basically. So these things have to be it has to be spot checked, and not, if we start counting the number of computers over there, it might take whole day. But that's just, you have to spot check basically and make sure that the numbers provided to you were close to what you estimate for this facility. So on-site verification has got 3 major items to check. What is the lighting levels, the foot candles, indoor air quality, of thermal environmental conditions. So primarily, this is the reason that there is an on-site, basically, that has to be done. And we will go into each one of these to explain what is really checked for, So go ahead, Joey.
For the lighting levels or the illumination measurement, this is typically done in foot candles as the standard unit of measurement for it. And it's going to be based on the Illuminating Engineering Society of North America, or IESNA, their standards or recommended lighting levels. So for typical spaces, they have it broken down. So for a classroom, for example, they're looking for 40 to 50 foot candles at the tabletop level. That's what's their recommendation. So we'll check to make sure that the school will have at least that much for a typical classroom, and we'll spot check a few classrooms in different areas of the building to verify that that's been met. Hallways will have a different foot candle requirement, and then gyms as well. Just note that UIL gyms in high schools will actually have a higher foot candle recommended level than, say, an elementary school gym. For offices, they're looking for 30 to 50 foot candles, and that's typically measured about 30 inches above the floor. And then restrooms, conference rooms. So different space types will have different lighting recommended levels, and that's what we're really looking for during the site visit.
So typically we will go and spot check a couple of areas over there and make sure that it's meeting the illumination levels.
The next thing to check would be the indoor air quality. So really they're wondering, does the building have acceptable indoor air quality? And this would be based off of the ventilation rates based on the ANSI or the ASHRAE standard 62.1. We're not going to go into that. It's a bit too much information, but some of the things that we check, or there are multiple ways that we can check these things. And sometimes we just do a combination of them. And that could be visual observations of the ventilation equipment in operation. What's the status, and how is it operating? Is it operating while the facility is occupied to pull in fresh air? We can spot measure CO2 in different occupied spaces. We can use the EMS or the BAS system to review the ventilation equipment schedules and operating trends. We can look at past data throughout the weeks or going forward as well, what the schedules are. And then we can also review mechanical design plans.
Yeah, so this one over here is pretty important to pay attention to, because you may have a score of 75, you may also have good light levels and everything else, but if the indoor air quality requirements are not met, which means that you have the dampers closed during occupied period, or you have high CO2 levels and so forth, that may not qualify for the Energy Star certification. And what you'll have to do is to make sure that those standards are met and make sure that the modifications are made so that those requirements could be met. And then once they are met, then you can apply again and do the certification. So again, this is not a very detailed on-site review. Basically, it's a very spot checking and so forth. But the main thing over there is that all these options are there to kind of check and review, basically, to make sure that in general you're meeting the indoor air quality requirements. In other words, this is not a test and balance kind of a on-site visit in which we are measuring the amount of outside air on each of your outside air intakes over there. So mostly we'll be looking at dampers are open, look at the EMS if the dampers are open and they're modulating, and then look at the original design plans, make sure that it meets the current IAQ standard. So that's an important one, basically, and that's something that you all need to make sure that if you all select some of these facilities for certification, that they are meeting the current standards for indoor air quality.
One of the last items to check is the thermal environmental conditions. So that's basically the temperature and humidity inside the space, to make sure that it's comfortable enough for human occupancy. And these are based on the ANSI and ASHRAE standard 55. So we'll be spot measuring temperature and relative humidity in different spaces. And then what we've provided here is just an example. Typically, we'll be measuring with calibrated devices to make sure that they're accurate. And as long as we're within the acceptable standards, then typically it's okay. We haven't really found any places that this is not quite met. It's pretty standard to have air conditioning inside the buildings.
Yeah, so this is also one of the important factors to keep in mind. I think typically you will have anywhere from 72 to 76 or 78 temperatures in the spaces. It needs to be within that limits. Relative humidity needs to be, what the ASHRAE requirement is. So it'll be, 50 to 60% over there. So we'll be spot check. Again, this is also a spot check, basically, in various areas, just to make a determination that the thermal environmental conditions are being satisfied. So what the Energy Star, as Joey mentioned earlier, what it's trying to do is that it's make sure that we don't sacrifice the indoor environment or the comfort level of the occupants, basically, and we want to make sure that they meet the standards that they are established over there before we can do the certification or when you'll be qualified for certification. So again, you got to balance the energy use of the building and making sure that the comfort is not, we don't have too many dissatisfied occupants over there. So that's the overall goal over there, is to make sure that we're meeting those criterias and everything is in line with what the requirements are.
So we just kind of briefly wanted to touch on some of the COVID-19 impacts and exemptions that Energy Star had implemented. So for schools specifically, there were shutdowns and hybrid schedules, and that may be the case for office buildings as well. Some of those operational changes. So if you do submit an application that has during the time period involved in your application, so for example, if part of your application goes into 2021 or even 2020, then and the building use characteristics were changed during that time, you're going to want to make sure that that's been captured on your application, because Energy Star, they may actually ask those questions during the review process, and we just want to make sure that those things are captured, and then that should help improve the time to get your application reviewed and certified. Because if any of those things aren't met, you'll have to regenerate the application and resubmit it and start over from in the queue for the review. So some of these details would be to update the building use details. So for example, if you did have shutdowns or hybrid schedules, you'll need to update the number of workers that are typically present during that time period. It might just be a month or two. For schools specifically, if they didn't have the summer usage that it typically would, then you want to make sure that that has been captured in the application to say that the summer for that year, be 2021 or 2020, that there was no building use. So those were some of the questions that we've seen that Energy Star would follow up on if there were operational changes due to COVID-19. For K through 12, Energy Star actually removed that 120-day period ending date rule for site visits. But as I mentioned earlier, now in 2022, I think that that this has expired. But one other change that they did implement is that for schools, you would be eligible if the school was open for at least 6 months. So if the school was only open for 5 months and 2 weeks, that doesn't meet the 6-month requirement, and unfortunately, they would reject the application. And then they also provided some site visit flexibility. I think at one point that they allowed to do virtual site visits as well, but I don't think that that's allowed anymore. So there's additional guidance on the Energy Star website. If you follow this link over here, that they'll provide a lot more details for different COVID-19 impacts and guidance.
So most of these COVID-19 impacts have kind of expired, but there might be a situation where it might come into play. But in most cases, they've now expired now, and they've gone back to the traditional or the established guidelines and rules, basically.
So one of the last steps in the process overview that we had mentioned is finalizing the application. So after the site visit has been conducted, if anything was found to be different, then these use details would need to be updated, or if the energy meter entries need to be updated, then that can be done. But whenever you apply the updates to your application, you'll need to regenerate a new application that captures that data or those updates. And then this is typically done by the licensed professional who's helping you to do the certification. And then after those things have been updated and regenerated, the owner and the licensed professional will need to sign the application before it's submitted. What we wanted to show you over here is where to submit the applications on the Energy Star website. That would be the very last page of this online application process. This is what it looks like, and typically you would enter the application number, which is found on the bottom right-hand corner of your application, and it'll have a format similar to this shown over here. And then all these checkboxes need to be filled out, and then you can upload your signed document right here through this online portal. That's where it's submitted. This is the only way to submit the application. So the last step was really the application review period. And as Salim had mentioned, sometimes this review process can take anywhere between 1 to 3 weeks, where throughout that time period that it's being reviewed, the EPA's reviewers may have some follow-up questions about your application. And in some cases, there may be random audits conducted, which may be a little more exhaustive, where they'll ask for a lot of backup information for anything that was claimed in the application. So they may want you to provide the actual bills for the energy meters that were claimed, as well as any photos of the site or documents that can verify some of those use details or where they came from, or the understanding of certain definitions according to Energy Star. The application is after it's reviewed, it will either be approved or denied. And sometimes when they deny the application, they'll provide directions to you on what they want you to correct or clarify. And then after doing that, you may be able to just resubmit it, and then they'll just review the new application after it's been resubmitted.
So one of the things over there, the random audits, they're doing them much more frequently, it looks like. And basically what they're looking at, that all the conditions that you had indicated, for example, if they want to clarify the outside air requirements, they may be asking you to show a picture of your screen, basically, that shows the outside air dampers were open on your EMS controls, or a statement from whoever did the site verification to indicate what the conditions were. Very importantly, that some of these measurements were taken during when it was occupied, so that's important. That these and then you have to kind of indicate what time you went there and what was the occupation and occupancy at that point in time. So the random audits are generated basically just for the quality control purposes over there, and then sometimes they are pretty exhaustive, as Joey indicated. So they take a little bit of time in gathering, and they give you sufficient time to respond. It's not something that's required immediately. But something to keep in mind that they're doing them much more frequently now, the random audits.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So with the audits, it's good to have the records and all the backup data for anything related to the application, even such as the square footages. I think there's been audit questions where they'll look at the Google satellite images and they'll see multiple buildings at a school campus, and they'll ask, we see 6 buildings on this campus, counting the portable buildings, but your application only lists 1, and they'll seek clarification on that, so we'll have to respond with what was actually there. If those portable buildings had been moved sometime throughout that application period, so they're actually no longer there, or things of that nature, those may be some of the types of questions that the EPA may have, and they'll look at the summer schedules for the schools if those are published on the school websites, and they may ask you, if you said that the building had summer school, but they look online and see that it's been closed over the summer, they'll seek clarification on that.
So in that case, for example, a lot of schools have summer activities. In that case, you will have to identify and provide a backup for it, that it had summer activities in certain portion of the schools. As a result, you were running the systems, or portion of the schools were running. So basically, it's mostly backup documentation that could satisfy their questions that they have.
Okay, so now we'll have a poll question. Are you interested in applying for Energy Star certification? So I'll go ahead and open up that poll now. All right, so I think we'll close the polls. I'll just share this information with y'all. So it looks like about 2/3 are a maybe, and 1/3 say yes. Well, I'd like to say that you're in luck for all those who said maybe or yes, because SECO, under their technical assistance program, actually allows for schools and local governments to sign up for a free energy technical assistance services, which could encompass Energy Star building certification. This is eligible for the local government entities or cities, counties, as well as the independent school districts. And it's completely free, no charge at all. The only obligations are that you commit to helping SECO's representatives to conduct site visits and provide data as necessary for the certification processes.
So let me just quickly expand on that a little bit. This program is available primarily. The goal of this program is to do preliminary energy assessments which is evaluating existing facilities, looking for opportunities, and developing a report that will result in identifying cost and savings for or opportunities that are available at different locations. Basically, it is available to, as Joey said, city, county, county facilities and school districts. Also, I believe you can be a community college and a few other entities that are taxing entities are actually all eligible for that. Energy Star assistance and certification is one of the technical assistance component that is provided over there, usually we have some limitations on how much it could be we could do. Because the idea over here is that there's limited funds and they have to be spread across the state of Texas. But this program has been really instrumental in actually kickstarting the Energy Star certification processes at a number of locations, basically, and then from there onward, each individual entity has taken it up over there. Under this program, if you have questions on the Energy Star Portfolio Manager, or if you have questions in general on certification, we can do one-on-one, training on those kind of items, and we can have a much more broader discussions specific to your situation, basically. So that all that service is available. It's at no cost to the public entities, and we just wanted to make sure that you all are aware of that. So how do I participate in that program? Actually, the on the screen on the right side is a one-page document basically that basically has your contact information and a few questions over there, and you complete that and you just submit it either to the state energy office or to the engineering firm that might be assigned to that area, and that way you can just become eligible to be part of the program. You can go to the SECO website. For local governments, there's a website. You can click on that link. For schools, you can click on this other link and then basically download this form and fill it up and submit it. Or you can contact LaShawn or myself or Joey in that case if you have any questions before you sign, and then we can help you through that process.
Yeah. And also I wanted to let you know that you can download this form straight from the handout section of this webinar. I think we have a copy of this exact form that you can just download it if that's something you're interested in.
Case studies.
So we'd just like to go over a couple of the case studies of some public entities that have signed up for the certification technical assistance more recently. I think Round Rock ISD, they had a number of schools. I think they applied for about 50 of their schools to be reviewed, and 47 were certified since 2021. And I recall the process, it went through 2021 and then they were approved in 2022. And then one of the other technical assistance items that Round Rock received was utilization of the bulk upload feature on Portfolio Manager, where we provided one-on-one training to the district on how to use one of those features on Portfolio Manager, as well as how to generate some custom reports for their own use.
So Round Rock has got a pretty active energy program, and they're also utilizing the SECO program to be able to further enhance their programs and so forth. So 47 facilities was pretty substantial facilities since 2021, and they're looking forward to doing some of these in the next few years also.
Another case study in the recent past is for Arlington ISD. They had signed up through the SECO program for a number of years, but I think that the rule was every other year they were allowed to sign up. And in this previous year, 2015 or 2021, they had 15 schools certified. But overall, since they began participating in this program, I think they have 60 schools certified since 2018. And what we're showing over here is a wall in their their energy management department building, showing the certificates or awards for all of the buildings that they've had certified. Looks pretty impressive.
That's another school district where they're pretty active on the Energy Star certification process and energy management in general. However, they've also regularly requested SECO assistance in doing the certification process and even doing the PEAs, which is a preliminary energy assessment of their facilities, so they can continue updating and continue progressing on their overall goals. So there was just 2 examples. Basically, we actually look forward to cities and county facilities. Hopefully, they are not as active as the school districts are, basically. But I think we're encouraging cities and county offices and buildings over there that are that could be Energy Star certified. So we look forward to talking to and answering any question that those entities might have to do Energy Star certifications and energy assessments for them.
I think this pretty much wraps up this presentation. We have a few minutes left, so if anyone has any questions or any comments, you can feel free to enter in the chat, or you can raise your hand, and I think we can unmute you, and then we can kind of discuss if anyone has any questions specifically.
I think the main takeaway over here is that you all could, the idea over here was just to give you a brief overview of the process. What does it take? How long does it take? And how do you participate in the program if you're interested in that? Mostly it was, the idea was to give you the basic information over there, so that if you all are thinking of doing anything like this and have any specific questions that might come up later on, you are all more than welcome to get in touch with us, and we'll be glad to answer any questions that you all might have. You can unmute all of them and see if they have any further questions. I don't see any specific questions, basically. So if there are no further questions, we can close this session up, and I think we are on time, basically, maybe 1 or 2 minutes earlier. So if you think of anything else, just feel free to reach out to us. I believe this presentation will be available in the PDF form, and also the SECO form will be available with it, and also this recording will be. Joey, you want to go
Yes,
on?
so I think we will send out a follow-up tomorrow. It should be coming from GoToWebinar Services, an automated email, but there will be links if you want to rewatch or check out any of these things. It will be recorded, and we'll also post the videos on YouTube, so you can search that and watch it at your own leisure, on your own time, whatever works for you. Just search on YouTube Texas Energy Engineering or TC Engineering, and we have a YouTube channel that'll have our webinars posted on there as well. So if there's no questions, I think we'll just end it early. All right, thank you everyone for joining.